I'm just curious, like based on what you've watched or any numbers you've come across, would you start to skew more towards Orlando's like maybe even better than a play-in team because they've won 13 out of 18 games right now. Like those wins
Yeah.
are banked, so you can play 500 ball and your 8 games, your 8 games on the good side of 500. Have you changed your opinion? Do you have questions about them?
They're closer to a top 6 team in the East overall than not, or that they're more than a playing team and certainly not a lottery team. A big part, maybe I'm reading too much, like the offense has been pretty good over this stretch. They're 10th in first chance half court offense, which is a big deal. However, and you sort of alluded to this, when you start to dig into what their best lineups have been and you sense it when you're watching them, their best offensive units are usually just a bunch of bench guys that are on the floor. And so, yeah, like Paolo might be in there or Franz might be in there, but it's Cole Anthony sort of driving that ship. They're winning, minutes
Yes.
where Mo Wagner are going to be in there. That's fine to get through the regular season. I worry, what do your top end units look like in the playoffs? And maybe it doesn't matter that much. I mean, so for instance, their preferred, what I would think would be their closing lineup at this juncture, if everyone were healthy: Fultz, Suggs, Wagner, Franz Wagner, if anyone was wondering about the confusion, Paolo, and Wendell Carter Jr. They barely play together this season. They have a plus 13 net rating though, and it's all because of what they're able to do on defense. And so you can put your top end guys on the court and say, yeah, we'll win these important minutes against other teams as best players. But if you need buckets, if you get to a point where you need to open up the floor in the half court, and I'm not talking about, look, the Magic do, if you watch them, they do a pretty good job of spacing the floor around the drives of Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. However, defenses don't give a fuck.
Right.
Still, they are going to crowd those. And so I don't think you necessarily need someone who's going to hit shots off the dribble, but they could really use another shooter. And I don't think it's a cliche to talk about, but like that is the missing element to this team. It's, maybe it changes when you have everyone who's healthy, and if Jalen Suggs is going to hit a bunch of threes and you have Wendell Carter Jr. kind of stretching the floor from the 5 spot, but defenses just aren't, for the rest of the season, aren't going to care. And so during the regular season, I don't think it matters. Like if you told me right now, the Magic finish that it's okay, there's Milwaukee, there's Boston, there's Philly, and then the Magic are 4th in the standings, I'll believe it. Their playoff stock still concerns me unless they figure out a way to effectively open up the floor, I'll say, in those high leverage minutes.
Yeah, to that point, you're absolutely right. Like the look of the offense.
Don't seem so shocked.
No,
it's like, holy shit, I agree.
no. Well, it's just like as I'm looking at my numbers, what you're saying is like you could not have provided a better sort of like segue into them, because the Magic going into tonight's game anyway. I'm sure it's better now because they played the Wizards. They're number 1 in rim attempt frequency. They are number 1 in location-based effective field goal percentage, but they're 22nd in actual field goal percentage, effective field goal percentage. So that's just like, and it's because they don't make threes and they don't shoot them, and it's because they don't have 3-point shooters. Like Jalen Suggs came into tonight at 36%. He was 3 of 6, so he's nudging up towards like the high 30s. Which if Jalen Suggs is like a moderate volume, 38, 39% 3-point shooter, that changes a ton. It doesn't mean he can run a pick and roll. It doesn't mean he's going to break down his guy individually and create shots for other people, but he's a hellacious defensive guard
he's all defense for sure.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Even with getting rid of positions, he's on, I don't know if he's first team. That would be something like right now he's been one of the 10 best defenders in basketball this season.
You can't have the best defensive guard in basketball conversation without getting to him like in pretty short order. And so, and the Magic are number 1 in forcing turnovers. Like he is very much a part of that.
But yeah, the stuff he does, I mean, on the ball too, but away from the ball, he's a menace and a half.
He's awesome. He's awesome at what he does. If he is a legit 3-point shooter, and it's like his track record is what it is. It's just awful. And so like, we can't say this is the new normal, but if he's improved enough, then you don't sort of, because if he's not, then what you're talking about is like, you kind of have to make a decision, and it's going to necessarily mean your defense will get worse to bring in the type of shooter or offensive player you're talking about. And you hate to take away from what's been such a strength so far, unless you really have to. Now, like the other upgrade is like right now they're starting Anthony Black, who just like barely looks at the basket, he's like no defense cares if he's open. And Markelle Fultz is kind of the same way, except like he can be on the ball a little more. So it's a little different, but like the Magic just do so much right. Like they get really good shots. They are number 3 in free throw rate coming into tonight. Like the offense like has the bones of something that will work. They just don't have the pieces that will cash in on the good shots they're creating. So like So anyway, like to answer my question to you is I'm much more bullish on the idea that this is like a mid to high 40s or maybe more win team in the
Mhm.
regular season, but like you could almost not draw up a like a worse or like a simpler playoff matchup for a team to attack where it's just like we don't let Franz and Paolo score. We pack the lane, and just if Jalen Suggs and Markel Fultz and whoever else are going to beat us from three, great. And they just, the game plan is already done for whoever plays the Magic unless they change the roster. But yeah, I think like you also assume that you get Wendell Carter back. Like, by the way, he's been a decent spacer at center. So maybe that helps
Oh, yeah.
too. And the defense is at least as good. Because you're going to get regression from guys like Mo Wagner's like 70% true shooting. And it's just like suddenly incredible, like in the 6 man of the year conversation. Goga Batadze is not going to stay this good. You might say Suggs is a little over his head. Maybe Carter coming back offsets that. But yeah, this team is like, they're on like a high 50s win pace right now. So if they could find any kind of offense, pretty exciting for them.
And I think what has changed, and like to your point, by the way, just about the shooting, having Franz Wagner lead your team in 3-point attempts per game at 5.2 is just that's like you need a higher volume guy. And there is right now among their rotation players, they have one dude, and that's Gary Harris, who is averaging more than 7 attempts per 36 minutes. And like the fact that Jonathan Isaac is second among their everyday rotation players in 3-point attempts per 36 minutes is just weird. And like I don't know how else to frame that. I know it's because he doesn't play a ton, like he's in his small stints. I did mention them as a potential Zach LaVine destination. Magic fans
Yeah.
don't like that. I understand why they don't like that. I might still, depending on the cost, if it's just salary and picks, I'm taking a look. But I do think their success has changed the context of what they need, where it's, I don't think Buddy Hield becomes available at this point, given how iffy Benedict Mathurin has been and the Pacers are trying to win. But it could be like, does Tim Hardaway Jr. become available? What about AJ Griffin in Atlanta? Are they ready to sell medium on him? That might be someone who could help them a little bit. I keep thinking back to how much like this team might be the second best team in the East right now if they had been the squad that got Max Strus instead of Cleveland. Would have been that's a pointless what if because it's just they're not going to get him. If the Grizzlies go off the rails, Luke Kennard on this team, that could be super interesting. I don't know who else could really become available. Like they just need sort of a caps lock shooter. It doesn't need to be someone who operates a ton on the ball. It just needs to be someone who defenses will guard in the half court in their most important minutes. And so that's kind of a big ask, but it's a lot different than saying, you look at some of these other teams and they need a secondary, like off the dribble score.
Right.
And the Magic, because you have Franz, because you have Paolo Banchero, and because you have Markel Fultz, and even just Jalen Suggs doing some stuff when the floor is actually open, and even you can run things through Wendell Carter Jr., they don't need that player anymore to me. It's they need the Buddy Hield who becomes available, because I don't think it's going to be Buddy Hield.
Or just like, what if you had, he's not available, but literally anyone could have had him. What if you had Isaiah Joe? Just like someone that is out there to just, if you're open, he's going to get up, 10, 12 threes per 36, and they're all good shots by definition because he's shooting. Just someone like that. You don't even need to be an ace defender. You can, it seems like it should be fairly easy to go find, because you're not looking for a fully rounded out player. You just need a guy who's going to like not get crushed on defense and take and make a bunch of threes. Like that's a niche guy.